In the Cold War era, the threat of impending nuclear warfare inspired the U.S. government to dig giant, secret bunkers in the mountains. Decades later, a fluke would lead reporter Garrett Graph to discover one such bunker, and from there, the history of the whole program. So, today we're uncovering how one man stumbled upon the U.S. government's ultra-secret nuclear holocaust bunkers. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other classified topics you would like uncovered. Okay, someone call Val Kilmer, because what we're digging into is top secret. Sometime in the mid-2010s, Washingtonian journalist Garrett Graph was given a peculiar government ID badge by a colleague who found it in a parking lot. The badge was dropped by someone in the intelligence community, who you'd think would be better about protecting secrets. At least invest in a wallet chain. Since intelligence was Graph's beat, the colleague thought he might be able to return it. But looking the badge over, Graph noticed that it appeared to have directions written on the back. Did he immediately rush himself into a national treasure-esque adventure full of betrayal and triumph? Not exactly. He put the location in Google Maps and found himself looking at a West Virginia road that seemed to run straight into a mountain. But that's not all he saw. In his own words, you could see very clearly these big concrete bunker doors, this little guard shack, chain link fence, and then this set of concrete bunker doors beyond. Graph knew he had stumbled onto one of the Cold War-era bunkers built to help the U.S. government survive a nuclear, chemical, or biological attack. His interest piqued by the top-secret discovery, Graph began researching the bunkers, when they were built, what they were intended to do, and how many existed. He was particularly impressed by Raven Rock, a sister bunker to the one he'd found. Raven Rock Mountain Complex, also known as Site R, the underground Pentagon, and the Alternative Joint Command Center, is located in Pennsylvania. Sanctioned by President Harry S. Truman, construction on Raven Rock began in 1951, intended to be a relocation site for the Pentagon in the event of a nuclear attack. The first of many bunkers built during the Cold War, Raven Rock includes 5 three-story buildings, a dining hall that can serve 4 meals a day, fire and police departments, a post office, medical facilities, roads, power plants, ventilation systems, and a Starbucks, probably. In the event of a nuclear event, the facility would be totally self-sufficient, and the personnel inside would have enough provisions for 30 days. But obviously, space was limited. So while the president's cabinet and their secretaries were all on the guest list, none of their wives were invited. If you're wondering what kind of men would leave their wives behind to die in a nuclear holocaust, then you probably would get along with Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren. When handed his Raven Rock ID badge, he immediately asked where his wife's pass was. When told that his wife, Nina Myers, wouldn't get one, he handed his pass back and said, "You'll have room for one more important official." Now, there may not have been room for wives, but there apparently was room for a bunch of old junk. To be fair, it was less junk, more America's greatest historical treasures. But try telling that to your wife. 2 bunkers were additionally designated for historical archival: Raven Rock and the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center near Bluemont, Virginia. In order to keep the United States history alive, artifacts would need to be chosen, moved underground, and saved for future generations. See, now that's the setup for a national treasure movie. The 2 items at the top of the list were the Declaration of Independence and a portrait of George Washington, both saved by Dolly Madison from the White House during the War of 1812. The Gettysburg Address was slated to be saved over George Washington's military commission, and a team of park rangers was organized to save the Liberty Bell. As for the Constitution, well, let's hope it negotiates for a higher draft position next season. Imagine there was a nuclear apocalypse, but you still had to go to work the next day. Well, back in the Cold War era, the U.S. government not only imagined it, but planned for it, putting contingencies in place to dictate how the United States would function in case of nuclear attack. President Dwight D. Eisenhower designated 9 people to work with private industries and recreate bureaucracies, while existing agencies were given specific tasks. The National Park Service would organize refugee camps, because they're already into camping. The Department of Agriculture would oversee ration distribution, because they're all about the food. And the post office would be in charge of registering the dead, because working there was already depressing. Financially, the government moved large amounts of currency, mostly $2 bills, to one of the bunkers. And don't worry, they set up a plan for the IRS to continue collecting taxes. So rest assured that even if society collapses and all of your loved ones are incinerated by atomic fire, taxes will survive. As we all know, 1 is the loneliest number, which is probably why the U.S. government built multiple bunkers like Raven Rock. For example, the Greenbrier Mountain facility in West Virginia, known as Project Greek Island, had the same general resources and a similarly outdoorsy name. Project Green Island, that's green, not Greek, was constructed to be a congressional bunker. Begun in 1958 under President Eisenhower, the bunker was outfitted with a dentist's office, a power plant, numerous bathrooms, and enough food rations to last 6 months. But no tiki bar. No thank you. Pass. Also, does the dentist use that office year-round? Or only in the event of a nuclear emergency? The Cheyenne Mountain Bunker near Colorado Springs was constructed in 1961 and, by 1966, was home to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, more famously known as NORAD. The mountain has its own power plant, and because the facility is still manned by a skeleton crew, it has gym access, a doctor's office, and even a Subway restaurant, in case you've ever wanted to eat a $5 footlong inside a hollow mountain. Man, who's that franchisee? It feels like the existence of top-secret bunkers should have been, well, a secret. But if you lived in the vicinity of any of these bunkers, you pretty much knew they were there. Secret bases and villain lairs are always turning up unexpectedly in movies. But in reality, a bunker ain't exactly easy to hide. Workers, however, did their best to keep their knowledge confidential. One such worker, Gene Bowman, would later recall that in 1950, when he was just 17, he was being paid $1.35 an hour to drill and blast granite at Raven Rock. If asked about the construction, the powers that be just said that they were building a tunnel. Of course, the system would only work for so long. And soon, newspapers were reporting on the second Pentagon being built in the hills. Better luck next time, we guess. Located in the hills of Maryland, Camp David is the President of the United States Retreat. And as many have noticed over the years, it's only 6 miles from Raven Rock Mountain Complex. This has led to rumors that the two locations may be connected by an underground tunnel. And it doesn't sound like a terrible idea. If the president was chilling at Camp David and bombs started dropping, it would be nice for him to have a direct path to Raven Rock without having to wade through a cloud of atomic fallout. Plus, you could probably have some killer laser tag matches down there. Factually, however, there is no such tunnel. While it was once perhaps plausible to believe its existence could be kept secret, the volume of information the government has shared about both facilities has made it clear no such escape route ever existed. If the president's going to get from Camp David to Raven Rock during a nuclear attack, he'll have to do it the old-fashioned way, in his personal, state-of-the-art military helicopter. It's a hardship the commander-in-chief is proud to endure for the sake of continuing democracy. In the 1990s, after the Russians built missiles capable of breaching bunkers like Raven Rock, they all fell dormant or shifted in use. President George H.W. Bush ordered the 24-hour operation of Raven Rock to end in 1991. When the Washington Post revealed the existence of Project Greek Island in 1992, the facility was closed and became a tourist destination in 1995. Cheyenne Mountain opened up for tours in 1992, but was closed to the public after the events of 9/11. Speaking of which, during the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, several government officials went to Raven Rock for protection. In fact, it was the undisclosed location Vice President Dick Cheney went to in the days after the attack. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was invited, but famously refused to go, sending Deputy Secretary Paul Wolfowitz instead. An act of self-sacrifice, or a reluctance to be locked in an underground warren with Dick Cheney? He did famously shoot a guy a few years later. Having proved it hadn't completely outlived its usefulness, the Raven Rock Mountain Complex underwent a large expansion after 9/11. Fuel tanks, square footage, and other upgrades created a space that can now safely house 5,000 people. You should still watch out for Dick Cheney, though. If you're wondering why the government didn't build bunkers for everyone to hide in, it's partially because that would have been hella expensive. But it's also because the goals of the Cold War doomsday plan were to save artifacts and government officials, and to keep the infrastructure of America alive. The plans also seem to have prioritized the executive branch over the legislative and judicial branches, despite the fact that President Truman refused to go underground during a suspected attack. President Jimmy Carter expressed similar resistance to the notion, making you wonder if maybe someone should have asked if this was a good idea before spending a gajillion dollars on it. If you want the full story of Graph's discovery and everything else he learned, we recommend his 2017 book, Raven Rock. Otherwise, watch out for nuclear missiles and get a career in dentistry. So what do you think? What's your favorite hiding spot? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.